Today, I'd like to welcome Dr. Tammy Watchorn, the Change Ninja, to the podcast. Tammy has a background in project and program management, organizational change, and innovation, alongside many years of mentoring, designing, and facilitating workshops, events, and training using face-to-face and virtual solutions, basically helping individuals and teams be their best. She's a change agent, educator, facilitator, innovator, coach, and currently is director of, and I don't know how to say this properly, AnSáS, and I'm hoping that's not too, AnSáS, director of Pentacle Scotland, and an associate sparking performance. So that's we'll find out what all those are in a bit. So Tammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
That's brilliant. So do you want to just give people a little bit of background, where you're from, what you're doing?
Yeah, so my background is, as you say, lots of project management, big organisational change. I worked in the National Health Service for a long time, and kind of went through the ranks that most people would do. First, you do the project management, get into program management, started doing more strategic, and some of the bigger change programs, did all the certification and, sitting in a room for 5 days to pass and get the certificate. And latterly moved into innovation. And my big kind of insight, I think, in that journey, or towards the end, I guess, the last few years, was that all of the change required you to work in different ways with people, because it was all about people. It wasn't about process. It wasn't about getting a certificate. It wasn't about having a risk register. It was about how you navigate the system, which is built around processes that you can't change, but mostly guarded by people. And so I, particularly for innovation, focused all of my efforts and energy on how can we innovate how we work and change how we work together and collaborate to do good stuff, rather than focusing on gadgets and shiny things that might look good, but they're just gadgets and shiny things.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And where are you? You're in the UK, obviously, well, I know that, but whereabouts in the UK are you?
I am in Scotland, recently moved out to the country. So I moved from being a city girl into the sticks, and just starting to explore what that's like.
Right, I see. That makes a very big difference exploring then from our conversation earlier.
It's a big change. It's a big change for a ninja to make.
Yeah, that's massive change, massive. Well, it's great to have you on. And obviously, the one thing that we are talking about is your new book that I believe you said is out in August, called... 23rd. That's it. Change Ninja Handbook.
Yeah.
Now, and we've got another bunch of items that we're in what you're doing at the moment. So what's a change ninja?
So I had all of these stories of trying to lead and deliver change and take people with me and get other teams leading change. And as I say, it was always really challenging. And what I found was, if you tried to do it down, tried to make change happen using the traditional process and routes, you just got stuck. The health service is just so against risk. It's high on bureaucracy, it's high on governance, it's very hierarchical. So nothing happened. And I kind of realized that to get anything done, you had to stay a little bit under the radar, focus on people and individuals, working out who you need to get on board and shifting that. And I started to get some traction and started to really shift things. I introduced things like Cube, which is Cube with a Q, which was a virtual way of working way before COVID and lockdown. And it completely changed how I worked. I think you've had Eddie Obeng on the show before. Yeah, so I started working with Eddie, and it was just completely transformed. It really innovated how we worked. We started being more productive, we were more efficient, we had more fun, we were doing proper collaboration. We were getting more time back to do more value-added stuff. I actually got rid of email in the health service, which nobody believes me, but I managed to get rid of my inbox pretty much because we just started working in a different way, but we had to keep it. It couldn't go up at a senior level. It couldn't be a big rollout thing. So it was done where it was needed and people got interested, and kind of creating that community of other change ninjas. Delivering the results, but not boasting about how we'd done it or bragging about the ways of doing it, and just getting it in that ninja way, and other people would often take credit for it, which was fine. find somebody who will own this at a senior level and talk about it. You can get much more done. So I had all of these stories. They're quite funny because we go into battle every day, quite often in organizations, trying to get things done and trying to understand why those battles were and how to navigate around them. And I wanted to do something funny with them. I wanted to get them out there, but make them kind of teachable moments and learning moments for people in a fun way, which is where the Change Ninja Handbook kind of came from. It's a very interactive, gamified adventure book. It's very different to your typical academic tome of how to make things happen.
I like that. I like the idea of that. It's something that it's kind of has scratched the surface of, well, the title of this podcast and my book was around that kind of trying to do something around educating through parody, through stories and things like that on the project management tools and techniques, rather than, as you say, there are some, actually, I think if you look at the academic tomes that are out there, there's some amazing work that's already been done. It's already there. And if that's what you need, there's the PMIs, the APMs, all those organizations invest a lot of time, a lot of money getting those things academically right.
Yeah. And
that's brilliant, and they should work. But the problem is as you kind of alluded to there, once you put some squishy humans in, and they're different drivers, different backgrounds, different experience, different cultures, that's when you have to adapt things to be able to get stuff done, and whether it's with your team or your stakeholders. And it can be frustrating, can't it, where you think, why aren't those people doing what I need them to do? It's obvious to me. But being able to understand what they're saying, what their point of view, and what's their, I think you mentioned risk earlier. That risk aversion I found is the biggest resistance to change, whether that be me putting in an IT system and having to convince the live service people who are taking it to run, convincing them that and understanding that actually me doing this to them may cause them to be working at the weekend and away from their family. Therefore, why should they take that risk unless I've got a way of fixing it if it goes wrong?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because I think quite often the risk aversion isn't real risk aversion. It's just something that person, they've got a reason for not wanting to do a particular thing. Yeah. And so the old idea of the change ninja is trying to understand why and finding ways to shift them so that they can see the value of what it is you're trying to do. And so really working on individual by individual basis, which sounds like it's quite time consuming, but if you can get those people on board really early, you can make up speed, you make up progress so quickly. Yeah. You'll get things out there and they'll champion it. So really investing in understanding individuals and their perspectives and approaching things from their, putting yourself, and that's really tacky saying it, putting yourself in their shoes, but really trying to understand what it is that would shift their thinking so that it's a positive for them.
Yeah, well, that putting yourself in their shoes is a as you say, it's kind of a little bit of a cliche, but it's an illustration of making you think about, actually, if I think about that person, and that old term, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, isn't it? It's that same thing of and before you criticize something or understand why they are or aren't doing something. And I've done it myself, where you sit there banging your head against the wall thinking, why is this person so against me and my project? and it's not about me and my project. Like, I love to see, that's why I've got a podcast. It's all about me, isn't it? So, but do you know what I mean? It's not about you. It's not about your project. It's about them, and it's about their commitments, and it's about their team even, or it might be their customers, or in like with the NHS, it might be their patients that's who they are really worried about, and without putting yourself in their place, you're never going to get it, are you? And no, I suppose asking is part of it, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, they might know things that you don't. So again, they might be saying no for a very good reason. So there's a lot of learning to be had in those engagements as well.
Brilliant. So tell us a bit about what's the structure of the book. What's the kind of a bit of I think you've given us a little bit of an outline there, but kind of how have you pulled this together? Tell us more.
So that was the challenge. So I was sitting on all these stories. So two challenges. One, how do you present things in a different way that's going to be interesting and people are going to get something from? And two, I mentioned to Eddie that I'd always wanted to write a book, and he says, whatever you do, don't write a book. It will just burn up so much time. So that was a kind of gauntlet for me. Anybody who gives me a challenge like that, I'm off. And all of a sudden this idea came to me, and it was based on Choose Your Own Adventure books, which I don't know if you read them as a kid.
I did, yeah. I not a lot, but a few of them I did read, and I did enjoy them. That jump to another page, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to, you're given a choice. Do you go left? Do you go up the mountain? Do you go down the river? And you go to the page. So I just thought it would lend itself. The stories would lend themselves really well to that. So it's a Choose Your Own Adventure type book. I can't use as Choose Your Own Adventure because it is trademarked.
Oh, really?
And they managed to sue. There was the film out a couple of years ago. Black Mirror chap made, so they sued him for labeling it as a Choose Your Own Adventure. Oh, right. But it's a Choose Your Own Adventure type book. So there's a story happens, and you have to make a decision. And as the reader, you decide what you're going to do. Are you going to go into battle with this person, or are you going to give up on this idea? Are you going to take the easy route because that's what they're asking you to do, or are you going to fight? So each story, and there's 10 stories. And then there's some other stories in there as well, which I'll explain in a minute. But each story has a decision to make. And sometimes there's other decisions further in. And then you get the outcome of that decision. And with them following that, there's a fable. So a bit like Aesop's fable, which again has quite another quirky story. All the stories are true, but they're not based on real people. So that, you know, there's stories that happen to me, but the characters aren't real. And then with the fable, you get the learning. So if it's about stakeholder management, or if it's about how to identify risk, or if it's dealing with a difficult person, there's the learning and insight that goes with it that you get from the story. And then there's a tool that you can use, and that's linked to the decisions you make. So you can directly relate the decisions to a tool that would either help you with that decision, or that if you went through it again, you would use that tool and you wouldn't end up with a game over kind of sign. So it's very gamified, nice. And it takes you through all of it. And I think they're quite funny stories. They're quite, they're individual stories in that they happen to me, but they're all quite common. You know, they're the kind of things that we've all experienced. So I think it's very relatable. And then as I say, there's a bunch of tools that you can then go away and use and have the story to kind of apply to. So you could work out in this situation, what would I do next and how would I go about doing it? So it's not a heavy tome. It's meant to be lighthearted and fun with the learning and the tools. Yeah.
That sounds excellent. So that gives you that tooling. And I suppose, I don't know whether you're planning this, Stealing Thunder. Is it designed to be something you do on your own? Or is it designed as something that you have a group, say you've got a group of you in a room and you're doing some training on project management? Is it designed to be able to do it that way as well?
Yeah, it wasn't designed that way, but I've been thinking lately about how you turn it into a team development tool as well. So you could use it in a team day. People could go off and, read out the story, go off and make your decisions and come back with what you would do and how you would go about it and share that learning. So it could easily be adapted to that. And I'm looking at building a kind of masterclass off the back of it.
Brilliant.
And somebody I work a lot with in that health service still, who was talking about maybe turning it into a game, an actual board game. So, there's oodles of ideas flying around.
Yeah, I've seen, you say this board game, that's a really good idea as well, because I've seen one of my previous conversations I've had with people about diversity, and there's some diversity games that are out there, and we've used, and a couple of training courses that I've been on there. There's ones mental health. I've seen out there a few mental health board games, and then another one we did, which was it was all about negotiation, which is a fantastic method of doing stuff, which one of our senior members of the organization, senior project people, they play a godlike priest figure that allocates stones to gods and things. It's all very thing, and then you go in there and you're trying to deal with this, and you inevitably fail, but when you play the end of the session and you go through it and they explain, right, when you did this, you were doing this, this, and this in your negotiation. You've given up your base acceptable bottom by doing this, or you had done this really well because you'd done it, and there was all these things, and that it's very, you need someone who can facilitate it to be able to read the room and read what they're doing very well. But it's a very, very good way of caricaturing what you would do, whereas normally it would be quite a boring reading through of this is how you negotiate, this is whereas that playing gamifying thing does work, and I can kind of see how I've currently got this image of, obviously with Cube and the stuff that you guys are there. I can see someone doing this session in Cube as well.
That's one of the other ideas. Master Change Ninja Masterclass on Cube, and different for not everyone will know what Cube is, but it's a virtual work environment with lots of different campuses and different types of space, whatever you're doing. But whatever decision you make could take you to a different space. So it might be off to see the chief exec. It might be to go and convince your team that this is a really good piece of work. It might be to go and run a workshop on something, or to say no and go home and give up. So it could really work in the virtual space. So because I suppose lots of ideas, but
because it helped. I don't, maybe from your point of view, it sounded like from what you were saying there, a lot of your experience was in, and I imagine with the scale of organisation you had with the NHS, that a lot of the work was matrixed and very virtualised. I'm guessing, did you have many options where you had all of the team in the same room, that was your team, or was it very much this remote, as we are now with a lot of things?
So traditionally, and I'd say still probably in the main, pre-COVID, it was trying to get everyone in the room, which again made it impossible to do anything. Trying to get clinicians from all over Scotland into a room to make a decision. It would take you months and months just to get the data in the calendar. So as I say, I introduced Cube quite early in that innovation piece, and we got some incredible things done. I can remember one particular project was, it was around data and what data is used for clinical decisions, and getting clinicians together to agree a single data set, which is really challenging because they're really smart. And they've all got an opinion on what they think is the right data, and they've all done the research and read, all read different things. So getting them together in a room to agree a data set and then implement it, they'd been trying for like 2 years. So I got them onto Cube, and 3 weeks later we'd agreed it, prototyped it, tested it, and implemented it. And we did it after surgery, because these were surgeons, so we did it at the end of the day. So we weren't trying to get them out of, they were still able to do their job. They'd washed up, they'd got a cup of tea, we did it at 6 o'clock, just met for an hour a week, and we just got on with it. Because a Cube creates this very level playing field. It's a really good way to get rid of the hierarchy and strip out some of those opinions that, that can get in the way. I'm not saying people can still have opinions, but there's that thing that happens when you get people together in a room. Why do you
think it is that things like Cube and potentially things, I suppose, you look at the metaverse on its way there, and I know the Cube is kind of a prequel to that in my view in some ways, but
it's a betterverse.
Betterverse. So why do you think it does that? Why do you think it makes that the barriers go away?
Yeah, I think some of it is you're not on camera, there's none of the visuals, there's none of the posturing that goes on. People relax into the space really quickly. It's quite hard to explain. You kind of have to experience it. But you're all these little kind of chunky Cubots, as we call them. You don't look like humans. You're really listening intently. We've got ways of working so people aren't talking over each other. We write on sticky notes before we talk, so everyone gets to put their opinion up. We do something called spin casting, where we check in with everyone in alphabetical order, so everyone knows they're going to get a say. So there's not that initial everyone jumping in with what they think the right answer is, because we do it in a very different way. And I think it just creates, because everyone looks the same and everyone's got a smile on the face, it just creates a really nice environment, and people just get on with it. And because that's the thing, everybody wants the good result. They're not disagreeing because they want a bad outcome. it's almost like they're too passionate about a good outcome to give up on what they think is the right answer. So it's not that anybody wants it to be a bad thing, and it just gives them that. It's quite a psychological safe space to be able to have the dialogue without trying to win the argument all the time and get their views in first. And you can facilitate that face to face, but it's harder.
And I think that it's kind of, because what's running through my mind there is a kind of, if you're on a conference call, and as you say, it's kind of in the behaviours that you would have in when we used to have, and it's funny, I was talking to someone the other day when they were talking about conference calls, about the fact that not long before the old lockdown and stuff, conference calls was what everyone was on, rather than on video Zoom chats, and that was the thing. And the behaviour on the conference call without a video call was that you would have people on mute, they would be working away while on the call. Knowing that and I think again that the way to get around that is that knowing that you're coming to those people with them on their and you're expecting them to contribute something through that, does draw that. And you can do it I imagine you can be a little bit more bullish with people in that virtual environment than in a physical environment. Of, if someone is sat on their phone in a physical environment, to call them out over it, or on their laptop, to call them out over it's quite difficult to do. Virtual environment, you can't always see them doing it, but again, it's how do you do that?
So Cube doesn't have cameras on, which I think helps. So you're really listening to what people are saying. You're not making any judgments. And we do it without thinking, if somebody's rolling their eyes, or we roll, and that, sometimes it's okay to roll your eyes, because we all do these things. But
the thing is, you roll your eyes again, you make an assumption of why someone rolls their eye, don't you?
Yeah.
You see someone roll their eyes, and you go, they're not happy with that. They might be thinking, why didn't I think of that?
Exactly. So you're making an assumption and you're reacting to it. So you can see something as being negative that isn't. So I think it does get rid of a lot of that happens. The other thing I think with Cube is it's full of Eddie's tools, which we call PETs, performance enhancement tools. So we'll bring something up if we're doing a business case or a project brief, and we'll all just put up sticky notes onto the template. And it's so fast, you can't be on your email or your phone because you'll miss it.
Yeah.
And we don't have long sessions. We wouldn't have a 3-hour meeting on Cube. We would have a 30-minute session, and we would just get some work done. And we have them more frequently. So Cube team meet every day for 15 minutes for coffee, and we do what we need to do. We wouldn't dream of having a 3-hour team meeting, because that's when people are drifting off and people haven't got that. But if you know you're going to be in for 15 minutes, you're all going to share what you're doing for the next 2 days, update each other, ask for help, and it's just 15 minutes. You're just very focused, which is hard to do virtually. And I think some of the challenge with what we've now got with kind of Zoom Teams is we've just exported all of what we did in the old world into this, I'll say virtual, but it's, into the video call world. So we've got all of our bad behaviors into this world, and it's worse because we're all looking at ourselves, which is really energy. Your brain is just going, I don't want to look at myself for 3 hours.
No,
so we haven't learned how to work in this space yet, I don't think.
I'd agree. I think that whole I described it as performance fatigue. And I liken it to the fact that if you're running a workshop, and a face-to-face workshop, and you on your own, and you're running a team of 20 people or whatever, you are the person at the front, you are performing all the time, you are on it all the time. And at the end of those days when you're doing those sessions, you're absolutely battered. Because you know that everything you're doing is part of what's going on. Even when there's other people doing stuff, you're part of that whole thing. And I think that's the problem that we all get on video and we're doing it a little bit now with this, and it's harder to do these kind of conversations because I'm still looking at myself thinking, am I looking at the camera? Am I looking at you? What am I doing? Is my leg? What? I want to take a drink. All these extra processing. And then you get all of us when we're just on a call, you can see yourself.
Yeah.
You can't pick up and if you had a table of people and you were in that workshop or in that meeting, you're sat, right? Someone's talking over there. Great. You're not, you might be listening, but you're not being looked at. So you immediately go, your demeanor will relax, you will relax, and you will just pay attention and just there. And then it's back on you, and then your attention, yeah, I'm doing, and you change. But when you've got the camera on you, you're on high alert all the time, aren't you?
Yeah,
And
everyone's on high alert all the time. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, the emotional energy. And I when we started in this lockdown thing, I was very keen because I wanted to keep the relationships, because I was worried about people's mental health. Put the video on, let's talk, let's see each other, make sure that I know you're okay, you know I'm okay, that kind of thing. And it did occur to me eventually that actually that wasn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
Though I do think it is useful to be on video, depending on the nature of the conversation. But it's certain things where if you've got a round robin conversation on the team, there's no point doing it. Or if you are doing it, saying, right, guys, when you got your bit on, pop your camera on. That's potentially beneficial. But the rest of the time, it's like you can turn the camera off and you're suddenly sat back and relaxed like you would be in the meeting. And maybe in the meeting, you'll be checking your phone or checking your laptop email or whatever. But actually, the energy level that you have to expend is massively reduced.
Yeah, yeah. And we've forgotten that you can just pick up your phone and call someone.
Yeah, I know. My phone rang the other day. I nearly fell over.
You don't need to put an hour's meeting in.
No, that's it.
You can just call them.
I think
if you're on Cube, you can just send them a little message in the lobby and have a 5-minute cup of tea and a chat, which is what we do.
I think the IM and using IM in a manner and using rooms within those is a really good way of doing it. I think you're right. We do end up having meetings. Like I've set mine all up so that it only ever books a meeting for either 10, 25, 50, you know what I mean? Knocking off those 5 minutes at the end as well. So, which I'm not very good at keeping to, but I was never that good at keeping to half an hour. Do you know what I mean? It was always going to go to 35 minutes. So now if I'm aiming at 25 and I'm ending up at 30, we're still getting an improvement.
Yeah.
But my diary now, I've changed it to be in every 15 minutes as the breakdown on it, so I can see where those slots are and try to do that. But then that does the smaller things a lot of context switching, I find can be quite tiring as well.
Context switching. So if you're going back-to-back meetings, switching from one project to another, you're not going to have time or energy to do any of the actual work.
No, and that's it. I blocking out time and having breaks and things like that. I think it's something that I think we do it when you're in an office. When you're sat with a bunch of people, someone starts talking about last night's football or last night's Bake Off or last night's Love Island, you have a break because you talk to someone about it. You have to
escape the chat, yeah.
You either got to go or you're going to join in. Either way, you have a mental break, don't you?
Yeah, it's not as intense.
Yeah, and whereas when you're at home, that bang to bang to bang to bang to bang, and I found that even at the end of the day, I used to have a commute, and I hit the situation where I step out of my door into being dad and being husband straight away, and I never had that break. And I think when you'd had a day of bang, 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 and it broke me, to be quite frank. Listeners will know. And I got to the point where I decided, right now, since getting back into work again, it's a case of going, right, I'm not getting burnt through the day. If I've got a day that looks like I'm going to be hammered, I do something about it now.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was kind of observing all of that during the kind of first lockdown. And seeing what was happening. I'd been working remotely for probably 3 or 4 years, so it was the same for me, and I'd started working for myself as well, so I've more observed it than been part of it. But Joe Stanford, who I work with in the NHS quite a lot, asked me to work with a neuroscientist called Tibi Vera, and to look at how we can create some training and learning around that kind of psychological space, using neuroscience, understanding what's going on with all of that, and learning how to hack your brain, and do various things. And we've introduced that into parts of the NHS, and we're just getting such good feedback from it. You can just kind of hear a real switch in people. Again, it's a very practical hands-on thing. We use Lego Series Play quite a lot for it, which allows you to really tap into what's going on. So here's a scenario, build it. What do you feel? And as soon as you connect the feelings to what's going on consciously in your brain, you can start to shift that. And it's just been amazing to see this. The best way to learn is insights. We talked earlier about the gamifying things. You'll get your insights if you have a go at it, which is the only way really you can learn and make real change happen for yourself. So being able to apply real life scenarios and building it and understanding physically what's going on, emotionally what's going on, mentally what's going on, to shift that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of thing in the next couple of years, because you say there's the burnout, there's people wanting to go back to the office so they can have that commute. I mean, who wants a commute, really?
I know.
Sit in traffic for 40 minutes just so you can do that switch between. So we need to really, I think, put a lot of time and effort into this. Otherwise, people are going to be really, really affected in the next couple of years with burnout and their well-being.
And you mentioned Lego Series Play there, and I'd not really heard of it much. We'd used Lego in a few things before now, and I interviewed a guy called Simon Dutton, who's fairly local to me here, and then we had him come along to my project management community and run some Lego Series Play sessions. And what we did, I think we had 5 people. It was to illustrate it and explain how we could use it. And the question that we used was, describe what lockdown was like for you. So everyone had the same Lego, and they built their version of what they thought was lockdown. There it was, and all these 5 very different, and they're 10 minutes to do it, and these 5 very different structures that were created. And that's like, well, yeah, that's fair enough, fine, whatever. And then Simon asked them to explain what they meant. And that's when the individuals lit up, and they're very different characters. I've known all of them from before, and they're very different characters and a very different level of outgoingness and things like that. But when they talked about what they created, you really got the emotion, you really got the deep understanding of what was going on there, and that you wouldn't have got if you just said, how's lockdown been for you? Oh, not that great. And I was sat there watching this, having kind of listened to Simon and thought, this is great, and then watched it in live, in action happening. I was sitting there going, this is astounding how good this is. It
blows me away every time I use it. It's so powerful, so powerful. Just the insights that you get yourself. Sometimes I get people to build something, and then I'll get them to move a brick. So I do quite a lot of growth mindset. I don't know if you're familiar with growth and fixed mindset.
I've read some stuff on it, not a great deal.
So fixed mindset, you tell yourself you can't do it, you're not smart enough, you're not clever enough, and you give up. Growth mindset, doesn't matter how bad you are, you want to do it. There's something different about you. You might want to learn tennis, you might be useless at it, but you'll persevere, you'll practice and practice. So, and none of us are in one or the other all the time. So it depends what it is. So I get people to build something they've got a fixed mindset to. Might be signing up to that uni course or learning French for the holiday, whatever it is, and work out what's blocking them. You then build a growth mindset and you get them to tell the story. So they're really really digging deep, because what Lego does, it allows you to build things you haven't consciously put together verbally in your head. So it's not until you start telling the story that you really get the full story out. So that's one of the powerful things. But then you build a growth mindset, and what allowed me to go to university part-time while I had 3 kids and 4 jobs, because there's things in there. And then you connect them. So you take from your growth mindset, what allowed me to do it, to your fixed mindset. And you can hear, I'm just very quiet at that bit. Everyone does it themselves, and I'm quite often do it virtually. You can hear the kind of the penny dropping. you can hear the thing unblocking from the fixed mindset.
Yeah.
And what they're going to do, and just great stories emerge. But I know there's been some real successes that have actually, people have then, it's given them the answer that they need to go off and do what they need to do. It's incredible tool. It really is.
Yeah, it's an area of training that and do you know what? It's going to be 2 years ago now. I think probably maybe not that long since we talked about Simon. And I've got a new team that I'm working with, and I've had challenges that I've had the previous year. And just in that conversation we just had there, it's just realized that I could have used Lego.
Yeah.
It's serious play in those environments to help us move past some real challenges.
Yeah.
I can see some coming forward in the minute at the moment. So there is I've just took a note there.
My day rates are reasonable.
Yeah, well, I'll have to see if I can get some funding on those sort of things.
I would say to anyone that wants to use it, I mean, you can self-teach, but if you're going to use it in earnest, I would definitely do some formal training.
Yeah.
Because it looks easy, but it's not as easy as it looks. There's most things that look easy. I would definitely advise on getting proper training if you're going to use it in earnest. But yeah, do you know, even just people building what they're going to do at the weekend or building their perfect holiday, you start to find things out about the team without saying, let's all share something about each other that we don't know.
Yeah.
So it's again, like Cube, like the neuroscience stuff, it creates a safe environment for people to open up without saying, we're all going to do a group hug today and love each other.
Yeah.
It just gets you, and you can choose how much you want to share. There's no, but people do, they just open up because it's in a very different way. So. Yeah,
because I think the thing is, when you build something, or make something or create something, you put some emotion into that creation and thought into it. And a similar thing, I went on a creative writing course a few weeks back, just on a single session, and it was around poetry. And one of the lessons that they had in, or one of the tools they used in there, was where you wrote, basically write down, I remember, and then it's when. So I remember I hated, I remember I loved, I remember. There's a number of different words that you had in there, and then you finished it off. And then, no, I remember hating, I remember loving, I remember seeing, I remember doing, or what, and then at the end of it, you take the I remember off, and then you read out the loving this, doing that, seeing the other. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it and found really good fun. Me and my daughter had been to this, and we both written this down. And then I had a workshop the other week with the team. The first time we got together face to face, and some of us first time we've met each other, some of us first time been in the building. And I thought, what am I going to do as that kind of team building starty thing? And I said, I'll try this, see what happens. And you know what? In a similar kind of way, from the team, every single person had an entirely different poem that they'd created, and every single one gave us a little insight into that individual and gave us something to talk to them about while we were going around and understand it. Now, some people in the room weren't full on into it and stuff, as you get with everything like that, and the same with the Lego sort of stuff. And it was really fascinating, the poems that came out of there. And it's something I will, with a group of people who I don't know, again, I will use it again, because I thought it just worked so well. To do that sort of thing, is that those icebreakers, but an icebreaker that gave you some information rather than tell me about yourself, turn to the person left of you and tell them what you had for breakfast on Tuesday. It's hard, and it's hard from a workshop point of view to be able to create those first sessions to get people knowing each other. But I do think the Lego stuff is, again, it like you say, breaks down boundaries, doesn't it? And listening to what you said about your book and the gamifying of that learning, it's kind of got that, I can see that thread that goes all the way through the things that you're talking about there.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I did because when I went independent, people would say, what is it you're going to do? And I'm like, I'm not really, or what is it you do? And I'm like, well, I do this and this. You know, I hadn't really got a story. And I'd got all these bits. So I'd got Cube, I'd got Lego Serious Play. And then latterly I've done the neuroscience. And last summer I did a coaching course, brain science-based coaching course. And it's all just come together. They all, it's like different bits of the, you know, jigsaw puzzles. And when you combine them all, and I recently had someone who said, I need to do something with my team, what can you do? So I kind of listed all the things. I said, we could do this, or we could do this. He said, I'll just do them all, because they actually all work really, really well together. I do the neuroscience on Cube, I do Lego Serious Play on Cube. They don't have to be on Cube. I did a face-to-face the other week with Lego Serious Play. And we created, it was amazing what we did in 2 days. We had a vision for the team. We'd got all the connections to different organisations that they had to think about. They'd worked out their outcomes and the measures.
Is that like the process flow type ones? Yeah, I've seen people doing that.
All the skills that they needed, and then they all described their perfect job in this team based on the skills needed. And then we needed a plan, because I hate workshops when you go, it was a great day, but what next? So we did a plan, but we did the plan up because they use Cube on Cube. So when they got back into the office Monday, the 12-month plan was on the board. And it was a safe space. We had some fun. We used lots of, but to do all of that in a day and a half and come away with the plan that everyone had agreed what their actions were to just get on with it on Monday, it was amazing. So all of the bits go, and you know, we do lots of coaching in there as well. So neuroscience course has got coaching in it, which we can do one-to-one or in small groups. Again, to get your insights, because it's the best way to learn, is what are your, and you know, building some of those insights with Lego and sharing that in the team. You're creating a safe space for people to be quite open with the things that they struggle with sometimes. So
and I've read, I can understand that, because I've read a few LinkedIn posts and a few other things around that psychological safety in the work environment, around how it's something that is needed in order for innovation, because and for problem solving and that growth mindset. Because if you do not feel safe in the environment you're in, you will go, right, okay, so what do I do to stay safe? And that's it's that whole, it's a little bit like that scenario where you say to someone, right, it's the carrot and the stick scenario. People don't have, by hitting someone with a stick, they don't find a way to be better at what they're doing. They find a way to not be hit by the stick. Whereas if it's a carrot, you find out, how do I get the carrot? And it is avoiding being beaten, or it's the same thing. It's those basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If one of those is threatened, you're going to try and avoid that threat. You're not going to be then looking to that higher level of, actually, how could we do this? And it, as you say, it closes off that brain, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you know, you talked about diversity earlier. I think we're terrible at being diverse. You know, there's the obvious diversity target type stuff, which organizations are pretty good at, but diversity of brain, you know, organization, they shut you down. They'll shut down your ideas because it's not. But when you get a team together in a safe space and you give them some Lego, and everyone does it, I've not had anybody who won't do it. So even people, you know, they've started off with their arms folded. I'm not playing with Lego, I'm an adult. There's a process to go through that shifts everyone beyond that. But because everybody's building an idea and then telling that story, doesn't shut it down, and it feels safe because it can't be wrong.
No, because that's your, and that's the same one
story. And then you take a story from over there with one from over there, and you put them together. You know, most innovations are a mashup of 2 or 3 things that already exist. So when you've got, and you're getting real diversity in a very safe way, and it doesn't matter if it's about, and quite often when I'm doing a workshop, I'll push, so it'll be like, what's your ideas? And then I'll keep going. So you go to 3 or 4 individual builds, you start getting into some real, you know, weird ideas, but actually there's quite often a nugget in it. When you put it with 2 or 3 other things, you've got a really a really innovative idea, solution coming forward.
And I think that it's. I was talking to someone the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but it was we were talking about ideas, and the fact is that it was someone whose husband come up with lots of ideas, and none of them particularly good. There's only he reckons 1 in 10 works, and I'm like, that's pretty good going, that is. And the idea creating ideas isn't about creating solutions. Ideas is about creating ideas, coming up with the suggestions, coming up with something there. Not everything in the old-fashioned suggestion box was implemented, but how many of those suggestions, those ideas, have triggered, we can't do that, but we couldn't do that, but what if? And and that's the whole point of it, isn't it? Is about that collaboration of creating that idea to say, well, we can't do that. And everyone talks about what's his name and his sticky notes and the glue that didn't work. As an example, it comes a little bit cliche in some ways, but I think it's that whole freedom to innovate. I don't know what your thoughts are, but it starts in secondary school getting knocked out of you.
Yep.
Because I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. My 15-year-old is brilliant in my mind. But maybe I've got rose-tinted spectacles, whatever. But even so, creativity, that sort of thing. But the conversations I have to have is, but that school isn't about that. Secondary school is about making a tick against the things that people in wherever believe are important. It's not the end of it. It's not the be all and end all. It is just the steps to get to the point where you can go and innovate. You can go and be creative. You can be given permission to get on and do what the hell you like. And I think that, but then we go into the workplace, and if we haven't had that thought process, and I don't think I had it, was going into the workplace, and it's about compliance. It's about fitting in with the Borg for all the Star Trek fans out there. It is about making sure that you comply to what that organization wants you to do. And then everyone goes, we are an organization that are disruptors, but everything has these ridiculously complicated processes that have to be done in exactly the same way, and no one may be doing anything else, but we're a disruptor. And it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute. Fine, you can be a disruptor, but there's got to be a way of allowing that innovation, that creativity of the individuals, because there's so much power in organizations. And unfortunately, the biggest, and it's a nature of the leverage of larger organizations, though, isn't it? Is that because it's so big, you've got to control it. In order to control it, you've got to put rules in place. If you put the rules in place, people only follow the rules and they don't do anything but the rules, because if you've hit them with a stick, they get told off because they've stepped outside the rules. And that's where it's not, I'm not sitting here saying it's dead easy, you can do that. But that's why small organizations innovate quicker. That's why small organizations you get them breaking down the barriers, or the large organizations that allow that, or supposedly allow that process. So the Googles and those, where they go, right, there's that little incubator that goes off and does what they want. And then when it comes something, they then fold it into the corporate structure and then put the constraints around it to bring it into a deliverable product. But that first bit is the bit where the ideas come, and if you do not allow that room, you struggle.
Yeah, you need to create the space. I think as well, rule break is probably not a great term, because it just, people want to be rule breakers or disruptors, or they're against it. And it's not really about breaking the rules. It's about finding ways around them. There's a really good book that helps explain all of this. There's some really great tools. It's called The Change Ninja Handbook. Just out in August.
You've been practicing your pitching, haven't you? Well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's like you said, it's about working within the constraints that you've got and pushing. Sometimes you have to push everything to the limit of those constraints. And sometimes you need to step over those constraints, so that I believe you need to step over them sometimes to prove long as you, but it draws me to another one. Listening to musicians, about learning how to be a musician and learning how to be the best musician, or whatever. You get some musicians that don't play the right notes,
yeah,
in quotes, or talented jazz musicians who play just weird freeform jazz, whatever, but works. But they have to be good.
yeah.
They have to know the basics. They have to get all the way through that solid knowledge to be able to do that and break the rule and challenge that rule and step across it to know that it would work.
Yeah.
And there's those sort of us as project managers, as delivery change agents. It's about going, well, we always change it like this. That's fine. We always do this process. That's fine. Challenge it, push back on it, understand why you're doing it, and go there and go, well, I'm not doing that part of a governance process. Why aren't you doing it? Because this is the risk if I do, if I don't do it, and this is the cost if I do it. Therefore, I'm willing to take that risk. Therefore, because I've got it within my budget, the costs out, I'm okay. But you've got to be able to, sometimes you've got mavericks, as you say, who just go off and do whatever they want. But if you're consciously going, not doing that, not doing that, not doing that, not doing that, I'm just doing this, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or you've got the other end of going, I must do every page of the Prince manual and take it all. And I know there are people out there who do that, and it's kind of, and deliver really bad projects because they don't like people.
It's just paperwork.
Yeah, and it just, but you've got to be balanced there. And it sounds like your book's going to give some ideas around how you do that in a more controlled manner.
I think it gives the ideas, and it also, there's a really key bit is think through what's going to happen if I do that next. So if I don't do that bit of governance, or if I go around that person, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
So plan it out in advance, and if you plan it out, you'll know what's going to happen next. It's a lot easier to sell the idea of why you're not doing X or Y, or why that rule is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you have to put the work in. It's not just going in all guns blazing and saying, this is ridiculous, I'm breaking the rules, because you'll get nowhere. You'll just make enemies.
Yeah.
So again, it's being ninja with it.
Yeah, I've had conversations with people around organization decisions. This is the person who can make this decision, and being told like, oh, if you make you're not authorized to take that risk. And I'm kind of like, why? Well, you'll get hauled over the coals and sacked, or you'll get hauled over the coals, told off, you won't get your performance. Okay, so if I'm willing to take that risk, it is within my risk. I might get my wrist slapped, but I've taken that risk because it's what's going to happen. There's my so they're going to shout at me. Will they sack me? Possibly, but highly unlikely unless I'm do a like what's his name at Bearing Bank sort of thing. Because again, he took the risks. He took those personal risks. He chose to take those. Now, whether he thought them all the way through, or maybe the guy on the boat, the canoe or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't you know what I mean?
It could have got away with it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? If you're thinking all the way through these things, and these are odd, extreme examples, but if you think
you're de-risking your decisions.
Yeah, and you're either accepting or not. What you can't do is do these kind of avoiding these things, as you say, hacking off a senior stakeholder who's going to stop every project you're going to go in, and then moaning about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if you've made a conscious decision to take that risk, you've taken that risk, and that's end of. And you can't moan about it.
Yeah.
Or shouldn't moan about it, should I say? It's just, yeah. So I think thinking on the innovation side of it, again, you said sometime before I forget to say it to you, there's an interviewee that I had called Ramon Vullings, probably a couple of years ago now. It's the Idea DJ. His title. He's from I can't remember whether he's from Holland or Belgium. I think he's lived in one, and I can't remember which one he's from. Anyway, and he talks about how innovations happen by having different parts of cross industry innovation. Yeah. There's some really interesting stuff, and the one that he talks about is around the American Navy. and they were having vehicles built, submarines built, and all the kits run on Microsoft. And what they had to do was a missile control tool or something like that, or torpedo or something, I can't remember which it was. And they're like, well, what are we going to use? Right, it's going to cost umpty £1,000 to have one of these control units or whatever. And then someone said, well, why don't we use an Xbox controller? Because everyone who's in here who's a 20-year-old knows how to use one of those. They cost $50. Yeah, they are produced in the millions. Yeah, and it's kind of like those someone would get cross things to go, why didn't we think of that? That's obvious, isn't it? But then it isn't obvious, but it is.
Yeah, and so if you had a Lego session, that would probably, how do we control this? Someone would build a games controller, probably in the first round.
Yeah.
And I think the real challenge with organizations, or at least my experience in the health services, innovation became a thing. Digital workplace became a thing, but they became a thing without, you don't need to innovate to be better.
No.
We could have just get rid of that process over there, because it's a total waste of time and it's achieving nothing.
Yeah.
So, but that's not, they don't want to do that. And I'm not sure how much and there was a few innovations while I was there that, but a lot of it was buying things.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and there's so many, you go out to a bunch of nurses and say, how can we improve the process on the ward? You'll come up with. So there was one, I was working with a guy, consultant on the stroke ward, and they were struggling with nurses in terms of they didn't have enough. And how do we know how the patients are feeling every day, because they can't all communicate, or the families come in and the families want to tell us how they think the patient's doing. And we just came up, I didn't come up with the idea, I'd read it somewhere, but it was just a little smiley face, emojis.
Yeah.
And you just have a slider. It's not innovation. No. It exists already, but it's a really quick way to do a mood. They probably do them in schools.
Yeah.
But a moodogram for the patient who's struggling to articulate how they're feeling.
It's perfect, isn't it? I saw something where at one of the conference centres that we've got, on the way out, there's 3 buttons on a little unit: smiley, neutral, happy. Yeah. That you walk past on the way out.
Just press one. You get them at the airports as well, I think now, don't you?
I think you do, yeah. But it's kind of how, rather than doing a survey, rather than sending someone an email, just go press the button. Actually, what you're going to get, if someone's really happy, you're going to get to know about it. You might know about it. If someone's really peed off, you're going to know about those, aren't you? And then you've got your trend. And then if you got the trend, you kind of go, right, what's not happening here? What's going wrong? And that's I can see how that really would simple. And it is sometimes the simplest things are the best things.
It doesn't need to be all digital, and it doesn't need to be all innovation. It's just making it better.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think I had a fantastic chat. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what it's going to sound like.
Well, it'll sound like a lot of the other ones, which is slightly meandering conversation around a lot of things around the change arena. And well, some people keep listening, so there you go. So hopefully some people will enjoy it. If people want to carry on the conversation, want to find out more about you, what is the best way to get in touch?
So LinkedIn's easy to find me, or Twitter at tammywatchorn.com, or thechangeninjahandbook.com is coming very soon.
Brilliant. And what's the date again that book's out?
23rd of August.
23rd of August. So
yeah, you can pre-order it on Amazon, I believe. All
right, available for pre-order now. This is probably going to go out sometime around that time anyway.
Okay, so it's on all the sites already.
Brilliant, fantastic.
And Cube, if anyone's interested in looking more at Cube, it's qube.cc.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you, Tammy, and I hope you have a fabulous evening, and good luck with the book launch.
Thank you, and I've really enjoyed that. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.